Welcome to another video. Now, yesterday, pretty much all of the ascendancies were leaked, and then Grinding Gear Games made an official post with all of the ascendancy information kind of compiled into one place. And in this video, I'm going to go over my plans for launch, with a bit of Theorycraft and discussion for build planning. So, I'm going to be starting Warbringer. Let's first take a look at the full ascendancy. Warbringer is a bit of a jack-of-all-trades class. There's a lot of stuff you can do with this ascendancy, with some of the stuff being a bit more basic as far as melee goes, while some of the other things are looking to be highly experimental. Anvil's Weight is a very good node, especially as the first node in this branch. Break armour equal to 10% of hit damage dealt. So if you hit a monster for 50,000 damage, this will break 5,000 armour. It means that you can reliably break armour without the use of any specialised skills or support gems, and you can abuse skills that consume broken armour more easily. To add to that, there's also nodes on the tree that increase the amount of armour you break, and other nodes that will extend the armour break duration. Both of those stats are important for the second node in the branch, Imploding Impacts, which makes it so that you can break enemy armour below 0. Now, we really have no idea what this means right now, but I expect this will work in one of two ways. We're not sure exactly if the armour formula is going to be the same as it was in PoE1, or whether it will be changed slightly, but the armour mechanic seems to function similarly, if not exactly the same, in terms of the description it has in the character sheet. So, scenario 1 is that it's just going to use the armour formula with negative armour, in which case I expect the cap will be 90% in reverse, so you can get up to 90% more physical hit damage from this node. Scenario 2 is that they've designed a system specifically for negative armour which isn't tied to the normal armour system, which works similarly to negative resistance, in that it just has fixed thresholds which provide more damage up to a cap. For example, minus 1000 armour could be 1% more physical hit damage taken, and so on, up to a cap that they've placed on it. Of the two, I think scenario 1 is more likely, but we'll see. Regardless, I think this node will be really effective. Then we have Jade Heritage, which I think is a cool node, but it's a bit weaker now that we've seen there's a bunch of more specialised defensive notables on this ascendancy. For example, if you're speccing into totems and investing into totem life and totem limit, you're going to want to take Wooden Wall, in which case you can't really afford to overinvest into defence. At the same time, the block branch is very good too, and you're unlikely to take Jade Heritage if you're already taking those nodes. Now, as for the ability itself, it seems to be quite unique compared to anything else we've seen, and the numbers on this skill will matter a lot. If it's like Val Arctic Armour in PoE1 and you can tank massive endgame boss abilities, the value of this node goes up. Then we have the Totem branch. Answered Call is a giant question mark right now. It's very strange that this node summons minions, as you're unlikely to have any kind of minion scaling in a totem build. It's possible that these minions somehow gain some sort of power scaling from your totem stats, but we don't know that, so for now I can't really decide how good this will be. The second node though, Wooden Wall, is very good for a build going heavy into totem scaling. 20% hit DR is very good defense, and you can always just resummon your totems. This type of build is going to be extremely good defensively because totems will naturally tank damage and also absorb 20% of hit damage that you take, on top of the fact that you have more freedom of movement in this type of build, but I'm not sure how good the output damage will be. Perhaps if you combine this branch with the Break Armour branch, that might be quite good. Then we have the Block branch, beginning with Renly's Training, which is the Gladiators node from PoE1, just with 40% base block instead of 50%. This is still a decent node, but it's mainly a blocker to the second node in the branch, which is much stronger. Turtle Charm lessens your block chance by 35%, but makes it so that you can block all hits with passive block. This means that you can block previously unblockable large AoE abilities. This one is really good. You can choose to invest heavily into block and reach the 75% cap against the less modifier, which is going to be quite the investment, but it will mean that you're essentially the same as having 75-75 block in PoE1. Or you could path to Glancing Blows at the bottom of the tree, at which point you'd need a much lower investment into block chance to cap out at 75%, but you'd be taking half of the damage from those blocked hits. The pathing may also not be ideal. Lastly is the Warcry branch, which I discussed in yesterday's video with a view to playing it with Corrupting Cry. Now, spoiler warning, there was a leaked skill gem that came out yesterday, so click ahead or skip off of the video if you don't want to see it. Sacrifice is a persistent buff ability that will allow you to use your permanent minions as corpses for use with your skills. So you may be able to have a build where you just run around exploding your own minions with war cries. That might actually be a thing. And other than that and Corrupting Cry, I'm not convinced that the bypassing of Warcry cooldowns is good enough for 2 ascendancy points on a normal melee build. I don't think bypassing of cooldowns is quite strong enough for that, so this branch will be reserved for those Explode builds or Corrupting Cry. Okay, so initially I was looking at starting Corrupting Cry, but I've changed my mind following the ascendancy reveals, and I'll be going for something a bit safer for launch. I'll be going for the Armour Break branch and the Block branch. And in the end game, I plan to use Giant's Blood and swap into a 2-hander and a shield. Early on, I plan to level with a 2-hander and take the Armour Break branch from the first 2 Ascensions. That will mean that when the time comes and I have enough strength to allocate Giant's Blood, I'll be able to go straight into a 2-hander in the main hand and shield in the offhand without needing to respec many nodes, as I'll already have 2-hand notables spec'd on the tree. Now, one thing that I'm going to be testing is Blood Magic, as I think that mana cost may end up being an issue, but I'll be testing with and without Blood Magic to see how Life Sustain is when it's allocated too. Early on, I'll be using Earthquake, Shockwave Totem, and Rolling Slam, along with the default attack. The main damage combo is Earthquake, which creates Jagged Ground, with Shockwave Totem that explodes any Jagged Ground in the slam radius. Rolling Slam deals very good damage with its secondary hit, and is useful when the boss is staggered, but I'll mostly be using it for its movement component to reposition. Further into progression though, I'll be picking up Leap Slam for much better movement. Then once I'm high enough level, I'll replace the main combo with Ancestral Warrior Totem linked to Rolling Slam and Jagged Ground support, and then use Stampede as the main skill. Ancestral Warrior Totem should create 2 patches of Jagged Ground with each skill use that I can then explode with Stampede. But I'll also be testing out other abilities in the totem to see how they perform. I'll be using Seismic Cry too to empower Stampede. Much later on, when Giant's Blood is in play, shield skills become an option, so Shield Charge in particular will be useful for movement. So here's a very basic overview of the skills and supports in the early game. We've got Earthquake as the kind of main skill there. We'll also be using default attack quite a bit, but Earthquake is there, and it's linked to Fist of War and Bleed Chance. And then Shockwave Totem is there as well to explode those Jagged Grounds, and that's linked to Increased Limit, so we get 2 totems instead of 1, and Bloodlust there for it to deal a little bit more damage because the target is bleeding from Earthquake. And then we have Rolling Slam linked to faster attacks, and I'll be using Herald of Ash early on as well for some extra damage and extra clear. And once I'm high enough level, I'll be switching over to Stampede, so I've got a few support gems socketed here. This is all just kind of Theorycraft at the moment. I'm not sure exactly what's going to feel best, but what I'm going to do is link this below in the description if you want to check that out. And for example, we've got Leap Slam as the main kind of movement ability. This is linked to Holy Descent. That's actually a really nice combo. So this will create Consecrated Ground every time you land with Leap Slam, so you'll be getting some recovery from that. The main combo there is Stampede, which moves you along, kind of moves you forward a little bit, and as you're moving along, you create small patches of Jagged Ground, and then right at the end of the slam, it creates like a big slam that explodes all Jagged Ground in the radius. And Ancestral Warrior Totem links to Rolling Slam and Jagged Ground support, so that will be also creating its own Jagged Ground, which gets exploded by Stampede, and Increased Limit is there, of course, so we have 2 totems instead of 1. And then Seismic Cry to empower Stampede. Scavenge plating is going to be really good on this Ascendancy, because we're going to be constantly fully breaking enemy armor, which means we're going to pretty much always be on that maximum 10 scavenge plating while mapping. And there's also Hammer of the Gods there, which I've kind of socketed into this setup here as like a finisher. So we have Second Wind, so we've got 2 uses. Execute, which deals more damage to enemies on low life. And then there's Concentrated Effect there for more damage. And Hourglass, which adds more cooldown, but just deals a huge amount of damage. So that will be more of a kind of finisher style attack. Now in terms of the passive tree, I'm mostly going to be picking up nodes for 2-handed damage and armor break amount early on. Then later on, I'll begin to focus more on strength, so I'm able to use Giant's Blood. and also armour break duration, as it goes well with that second node on the armour branch, and block chance once Giant's Blood is in play. So I think overall it will be fairly straightforward on the passive tree and probably end up being quite similar to Titan trees early on at least. And here's some examples of more specialised nodes I want to grab on this character. So we've got Beef, Login, and then Breakage for more armour broken per hit. And this wheel here with Pile-On and Irreparable is really good. Huge damage boost there. And later on, for block chance, Vigilance is really nice. And this node right here might end up being my Anoint on the Amulet. It's just so good, but it's all the way over near Glancing Blows, and I think I might want to try out Pure Block first to see how reasonable it is to cap it out. But it may be the case that Pure Block is too difficult to reach with that 35% less modifier, in which case Glancing Blows might actually be quite good. It's just the pathing getting over there that I'm a little bit concerned about. So I'm working with Mobalytics to create some written guides on their site. So this build concept will have an article over there. It will be very basic to begin with as we have limited information, but as I play the build I'll be updating it. If you're interested in that, I'll be linking that article in the description and in the pinned comment of this video once the article goes live, which should be tomorrow or early on launch day. I'll also put out a tweet once it's up, and a community message here on YouTube. But that's it for this video. Thanks for watching, and as always, stay tuned and stay safe.